In this interview, I talk with Lucas and Santiago from TX Pipe about some of the tools and plugins that they and their teams are working on to bring to the Cardano ecosystem to make developing dApps that much easier. One of their platforms that they're building is called Demeter, and this takes care of all the infrastructure that you might need to run any of these dApps. So it's a platform as a service product where you can spin up all of the environments that you need and start building straight away. So you're not worrying about all those infrastructure side of things when building up a dApp. They take care of that for you so that you can just go ahead and build your code, build your dApp itself. They also look after Aiken, which is an alternative smart contract language for Cardano. So you don't need to know Haskell or Plutus in this case. You can use Aiken and then use that to build up your smart contracts. Let's get into this one.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.
I have Lucas and Santiago joining me from more than one project, actually. This is TX Pipes, Demeter, and Aiken. So it's a whole bunch of projects and a bit of a developer ecosystem out there. So anyone that wants to start building on the Cardano ecosystem has some really cool tools to play around with. And I have these guys here to explain exactly what it's all about and how other developers can actually utilize this. So Lucas, Santiago, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Peter.
So let's start off a little bit about your backgrounds itself and how you guys got into the crypto and the Cardano ecosystem. So Lucas, could you give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself and how you found yourself into this space?
I'm Brazilian, but born there, grew up in Miami, studied computer science. And then at some point, like around 2017, 2018, there was that huge bull run that was like kind of like one of the initial really like getting attention from like mainstream media and stuff like that. And I wasn't really involved in crypto, but like I kind of saw everything that was going on. So I was like, oh, okay, like this is interesting, So you buy a little bit of ETH and kind of just like poke around, see what's going on. And then eventually I found Cardano because somebody messaged me saying like, oh, do you know there's this one blockchain being written in Haskell? And they knew I was kind of like into that. So I was like, oh, that's interesting, So I kind of saw what was going on over there, and I kind of started to just enjoy what they had going on and just got more involved over time. And then, the next bull market kind of came around, and last year at some point I was like, well, I guess I don't have to work anymore. So I kind of stopped that as far as like working outside of crypto, right? And so I kind of just started figuring out ways to be more actively involved in the Cardano ecosystem, right? So, just building like little things. And then eventually I sort of met Santiago and TX Pipe and started helping with some of the projects that he had going on over there, like Oura and stuff like that. And then, we just got along. So I just kept helping with the projects. And then, I just had this idea like, Plutus is a little bit rough, Haskell, Cabal, using Nix, all this stuff is a little bit rough for a lot of developers. So it's like, like what kind of programming language would I want myself to write smart contracts on Cardano? So, eventually me and Casey, a friend of mine, started putting together what was like the beginnings of Aiken. And so we started with kind of like the low level stuff and worked our way up to like actually having a language.
Which is really, really cool. Like who sits around and spends time writing their own programming language? It's not something you do for fun, but it sounds like you're doing it for fun. But for an end goal anyway. And Santiago, what about yourself? How did you find your way into the crypto and Cardano space?
Yeah, so I consider myself a software developer. I've been doing software-related stuff for more than 20 years. And for several years, me and my partner, Federico, we had a software factory here in Argentina. I'm based in Buenos Aires. And at some point, we decided that we wanted to stop building software for others and that we wanted to build our own products. So we looked around to see what was a good industry. At some point, I stumbled with videos from Charles, and I got hooked. To be honest, those videos were the defining factor. Cardano made sense from the technology perspective, from the ethos of the ecosystem, and we decided that it was both a good challenge from the technical perspective and also a place where we felt that we can make a difference with the software that we built. That's how we decided to create TXPipe. We met Lucas, and the goal of TXPipe is to build open source tools. We are true believers that open source is the way to build software, and we, from the beginning, understood that Cardano was a little bit hard to develop with. This is, we believe, because of all the innovation that is happening at the protocol level. Too many new things. Working with UTXO is not easy. Working with a new language like Bluetooth is not easy. Functional programming is not the easiest of the ways to develop. So we thought that we could chime in by creating tools with focus on developer experience, and that's what DXPipe tries to be.
And I have to say, I think the developer experience, because it's so new and early, is painful. I think that's putting it nicely. For a lot of developers, myself, when I started the Plutus Pioneer program, just setting up my Nix environment destroyed my laptop. I don't know if other people had this issue, but I went for the partitioning option and set up a Nix partition and destroyed my MacBook and had to restore it again. And I did that twice, 2 times in a row before I managed to get it working. But far out. It is an annoying process, but you guys are developing a whole bunch of tools and suites around that to make it a lot easier. I don't know where to start here. Should we start on some of the open source tools that you guys have built at TXPipe, and then we'll go and look into Demeter and what you guys are building around there?
Yeah, sure. That's a good way. It's actually the timeline that we followed in the development. When we started, we thought that one of the painful parts was dealing with data integration of what's happening in the blockchain and how we query that, how we store that. DB-Sync, it's also a beast if you want to install it yourself. That means rendering your laptop, submitting your laptop to almost just DB-Sync. So that's how we thought that maybe something lightweight where we can just keep track of the tail of the transactions in the chain would be an interesting idea. And that's how Oura got created. Oura, it's a tool that uses Autobot security protocols to connect directly to a node. It can be a relay node or a block producer, and it will hook into the chain sync process and just start receiving blocks, and will parse that data and deliver very succinct small JSON payloads with the events of what's happening inside those blocks. So any other consumer can just hook and start listening to those events and react. It's a well-rounded tool. It's small, efficient, and it, I think, solves a pain point. And it started as just as an experiment to see if we could build something in Cardano, and it went really well. The community received it with a lot of good feedback, so we decided that we should continue that path of developing tools. Then came Scrolls, which is sort of like an indexer of entities. The idea is that it's read optimized in the sense that you want to pay for the processing and the aggregation of the data upfront and store the data in a specific shape, which is very efficient to query afterwards. You can think of that structure as a cache. That's why it uses Redis as a backend. So if you want to have a lookup table of things that are on chain, the history of the chain, that's what Scroll is. And then Aiken appeared in the landscape, and I will let Lucas explain a little bit more. And afterwards, maybe we can discuss Demeter.
I was like kind of reading the Plutus core paper, the untyped Plutus core stuff specifically. And I was like, I kind of get this. Like, I kind of understand what's going on here, So at the very least, it'd be nice to, like if you go on like Cardano scan or something and you see like a transaction that has a smart contract in it, it has like this big like hexadecimal thing that's like the script, right? So like it'd be kind of cool to take that and pull it apart and just like see the UPLC that like makes it. UPLC, by the way, is untyped Plutus core. I'm going to say that a lot now. And so we kind of started there, right? And so we got the deserialization and serialization of the contracts, right? Like the way it's stored in a transaction. And then we built the parser for UPLC. And then eventually we're like, what if we ran it, right? So it's like, what if we built the virtual machine in Rust to actually execute this thing? And so we did that, right? And obviously, we look at the Haskell implementation and try to kind of port it over to Rust and, changing some things to be a little bit more idiomatic for Rust, right? And there's some slight differences, but it's pretty much the same virtual machine, right? The semantics are all the same, and we have all of the budgeting and stuff, right? And so once we had that, Lucid, right, Alessandro's library, started using it to be able to calculate the X units for your redeemers in transactions without using like Blockfrost or something like that, or like a node, right? So it just happens client side, just quickly executes the contract, figures out the spent budget, and then you can use that to update the values in the redeemers for the X units. And then of course, you can submit your transaction. And so that was cool. And it was a nice milestone because it's like, okay, somebody else in the ecosystem is using this in a serious way. Yeah. Right. And then once we had that kind of like groundwork done, we had the whole kind of like base layer done. We're like, all right, let's move on now and actually create like a programming language that, compiles down to untyped Plutus core and, have this alternative smart contract programming language for Cardano. And we also call it a toolkit because we have all of the underlying stuff too, right? So at this point, we're like close to saying it's alpha ready. People can write in it and start testing out like transactions with the compiled code and all that. We have a VS Code extension already. There's a formatter. There's some minimal language server protocol stuff. So it integrates real nice with VS Code. I think Ktors, Matthias, wrote a Vim plugin for it, right? And the idea really is to just have the kind of experience you would expect from a programming language in 2022, right? So it's like you look at like Elm or Rust, and like the error messages are pretty and helpful, right? So we wanted that, right? So it's like, okay, we have the good error messages, that's in place. We have the language, and really that's the main focus, right? Just make it easy.
Yep.
Make it a good experience, right? And then let's see if people enjoy it. And at the very least, I'm going to use it because I'm building it for myself, right? So it was a selfish endeavor in that it's like, what would I want? And then we just kind of took it from there, right? And that's it on a high level, kind of like what's going on with Aiken. And we'll be making some announcement within like the next like week and a half about like an alpha or something like that. So.
Okay, that's brilliant. Like anything that you can do to make the developer experience a little bit nicer or easier in general, I think is crucial at the moment for adoption and bringing in more developers into the ecosystem. So in terms of the difficulty of someone picking up Aiken or Plutus, like what's the comparability between the two? And would you need to have the core understandings of how Plutus works to be able to use Aiken as well?
So you do need to understand how Cardano works and like how smart contracts on Cardano work.
In general, yeah.
Yeah, it is a functional language, right? Kind of by virtue, you kind of have to. And so, overall, it should be easier to install, right? Like you shouldn't need Nix or Cabal or anything that's a little annoying to install, right? And has like an ecosystem of that's like associated with like snobby developers, right? Like not that all Haskell developers are of this nature, but there is an association there, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Like there, and so, kind of also foster like a friendly like culture, right? Like there's no need to be excessively pedantic, right? Just for the sake of it. And so it should be more approachable, right? It should be easier to set up. But you're still gonna have to, kind of get used to functional programming if you're not used to it. And, you'll still have to understand how Cardano works, right? Like it's not like, oh, like magically, like Cardano itself is now easier, right? And just have like a more chill language and environment to actually work on the smart contracts at the very least.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now you guys have made this even easier now. So most developers just want to write code and build things and not look after infrastructure and development environments and all these things, dependencies. And you guys have made this even easier now with your product Demeter. Can we talk about that and exactly what you guys are planning with it, what developers can expect out of it, and everything around it?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Developers don't want to deal with infrastructure. Nobody does, actually. And the onboarding process in Cardano means installing a node, syncing the node, installing DBSync, restoring a snapshot, installing Optimios, and a full set of tools that you need just to get started. And we believe that there is a better way. We believe that a multi-tenant environment, meaning the same resources, but for many developers consuming them, it's a better approach. It doesn't make sense for each developer in the ecosystem to have all of these tools installed locally. It's easier if we can share many of these tools. That's how we started thinking about Demeter, which is a cloud-based platform where you have all of these tools already installed, and you can set up your own private environment within that cloud set of servers. And from there, you can deploy things or even develop things with access to all of these tools already configured out of the box. And by develop, I mean that it provides an IDE. If you know VS Code, that's what we use. It's a web-based version of VS Code that you just spin up as sort of like a virtual machine that it's running within the cluster, within the cloud environment that has all of these tools available. So the developer will get a VS Code IDE with everything already available. No need to set up anything. You can just start coding. And on top of that, we are working hard on preparing not only us, but also we're reaching out to the community to build out these starter kits, which are examples of code that one can use as a starting point. And just by clicking one button that you see in the README of the GitHub repository, that will give you the VS Code environment with all of the dependencies that you need to run that particular example. And you can use that to understand how the technology works, or even to use it as a starting point to build your own thing on top of that. So that's what we are trying to build on Demeter. And I want to emphasize that it's not a place for TXPipe tools. It's a place for any tool that makes sense from the developer perspective in the Cardano ecosystem. Of course, there is Oura, there is Scrolls, the tools that we build, but we also integrate Ogmios. We are working on integrating Cupo. We want to work on integrating Carp. And we also had some examples of how to integrate Hydra heads within the environment. So the idea is that as we move forward, we are trying to include as many as the developer tools and components that make sense for the ecosystem are available.
That's really, really cool. It's good that you're also integrating all those other tools as well, such as Carp and Osmigos, or anything else built in the Cardano ecosystem that people love using, all in the one platform. Now, it sounds like I can use this platform. I'm assuming it's a paid platform. I don't know how much it costs or whatever it is at the moment. But then, am I locked into the platform? Can I move away from it? Do I deploy apps on it? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, sure. That's a big issue, and the way that we think about it is that the problem is the vendor locking. When, for example, you are developing on AWS or Google Cloud Platform, you have to prepare your software with a specific set of libraries and tools and APIs that make sense on that environment. And that locks in the developer to that provider, to that vendor. So moving away from that into other place, it's not easy. It requires a lot of effort. So we don't want to become that kind of provider in the middle. So the idea is that everything that you see in the platform is built on top of open source software. And at any point in time, you can request the scripts that will allow you to get the same resources, the same infrastructure components, and even the same UI that you see installed on your own cloud provider. You can take those scripts, create your own cloud provider account, and deploy that. Or even if you want to set up a bare metal environment using this script, you can also do that. Everything is, as I mentioned, based on open source. In particular, the server orchestration framework that we use is Kubernetes. So as long as you have a Kubernetes cluster, you should be able to take the scripts and keep going without us having any kind of intervention. You're free at any point to eject from our environment and use the same things in a self-hosted fashion.
And that is fantastic. I really dislike vendor locking. I do like to be able to move from provider to provider. But as a developer, I don't want to have to deal, like, goes back to that infrastructure management pain point again. I don't want to have to deal with Kubernetes servers and all that stuff. I just want one invoice, have my developer environment, have everything up to date to the latest environments, and just go deploy, just write the code, right, get my work done essentially, and just move on to the next point. So I love that you've embraced all those aspects around it. Now, what about the business model around this? It's like you guys, it sounds like you're all self-funded. You're very you did okay in the last bull runs, so you've got a bit of cash and whatever there. But how are you going to monetize this project? I'm looking at the Demeter site at the moment. There's no, like, I can't see any billing or subscription models around this. I'm assuming there would be, but I don't see anything at the moment. So what's the business model to keep this running in the future and to make sure that developers will have a platform that they can always rely on and build on?
Yeah, because being self-sustainable, it's important. It doesn't make sense if you have a product that it isn't. We got founded in the last Catalyst fund for building Oura V2 and building Dollars, which are two independent tools that we plan on using as part of the suite of tools within Demeter, but it's not specific Demeter development effort. Now, for Demeter, our plan is to, before end of year, make available some paid plans. If you want more throughput, if you want more bandwidth, you need more resources, then you can promote your project from the free tier, which is what you get currently, into one of the different paid tiers. You will have the same features. There's no kind of locked feature. There's no gates that allow you to use one tool or the other. Every tool is available in all the tiers, but if you want more throughput, if you want more bandwidth, that's when you should jump to the next tier in the process. The idea is that you will have these compute units. Each plan will give you X number of compute units, and you can decide how you consume those units within the set of features that you have in Demeter. If you want to use them for DB sync, that's an option. If you want to use it as workspace hours, that's also an option. So you choose your own adventure and you decide how you consume those units that you get for the upper tiers.
Right, that's absolutely brilliant. I love the self-sustainability, the plans, and always having that free tier. So anyone that's just starting, the last thing you want to do is fork out money. You just want to experiment with the platform and learn how to develop. So you have some sort of entry point there for new developers in the ecosystem to start playing around with it, and that's absolutely brilliant. So I absolutely love that part. Now, have you seen or are you seeing any traction in the platform? Any large projects having a look at what you're doing and saying, hey, this is cool. I really like it. Can we use your infrastructure or anything like that? Well, what are you seeing develop around the ecosystem at the moment that you guys are building?
Yeah, well, yes, we see a lot of good feedback. The Discord server, it's always busy with people wanted to ask questions or share some of the experiences. Then we also see a lot of workspaces being created. I think we are about to reach 1,000 workspaces. We are
Wow,
900.
that's great. Awesome milestone.
Yeah. We haven't reached it yet, but we are 900 and something. So that's a huge milestone. And also the JPEG Store team, it's using Demeter for some of the production workload. So that's also one of the milestones we are very proud about. Very high profile, professional project in the ecosystem as JPEG Store that it's using our services for production workload. It's a very important batch that we consider to be a milestone in our process.
You're missing that badge on the website.
Yeah.
You need a couple of those badges on the website, just at the bottom saying, hey, these projects are using us at the moment.
I totally agree.
Trust in it. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Brilliant, guys. Is there anything else that we need to know about this? Is there much documentation on how to use the platform and all your tools as well?
There's always room for more documentation. We are working to provide that, but as you know, we are not a very big team. So we are now trying to see how we distribute the bandwidth. One thing that I recommend if you want to try out Demeter is that you start from these starter kits repositories, because the README in the repository guides you through the process of what you should do to get your workspace and run that particular project. So that's, I believe, the best way to tackle the entry barrier, and it's good documentation to get started. Now, yes, we need to build more videos. Maybe we can take some hints from you, Peter. And we are also trying to, for each of the features, summarize the links to the official documentation for those features. Because actually, Demeter, it's a big bag of tools from us, GXPipe, but also from the community. So the idea is that documentation will be links to the official docs for each of the tools in an ordered location and with a nice table of content.
And then as far as documenting some of the open source projects, if you were to go to the repository of any of them, in the description of the repository, there's usually a link to a hosted MD book. MD book is just a cute little tool for documenting stuff. All of our projects should have one, and if they don't, they will have one soon. And that's more like developer documentation if you want to use those open source tools yourself.
Brilliant. Okay. I'll grab all the links to everything from your websites, put them in the show notes so that everyone has references to them as well. And guys, thank you so much for everything that you guys are doing and building out for other developers in the ecosystem to start building and developing some really cool things. This infrastructure kind of level is really, really needed at the moment. And you guys seem like you're pioneering the space here to actually deliver and make the developer experience just that much easier.
Nice. Thank you, Peter. And thank you for providing this space to showcase the stuff that we are building.
all the links in the show notes for you guys. There's a lot here, a lot of documentation to go through as well. And thank you, Lucas and Santiago, for doing this interview. Now, I have a lot more of these coming up this whole entire week. If you're watching this as they come out, there'll be more and more projects that are building on the Cardano ecosystem, writing alternative smart contract languages, examples of starter dApps that people have built, and also more infrastructure code and everything around it to make your life easier when building dApps on the Cardano ecosystem. Really hope you like this series. If you enjoyed this one, please consider giving me a thumbs up, click subscribe, click on that notification bell, and you'll hear more from me real soon. See you in the next video.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.